The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're going to love it.
Okay, let's go.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Hope you guys had a good Monday. Sorry I missed you yesterday. I really am. Really quick, shout out to my boy David Nobles. Gotta give my brother a shout out, the double nickel. Happy birthday, David. Great to be back in touch with you, as you know, and just wanted to wish you a good one. Hope you had a great day yesterday. Anyway, actually, that's funny. I'll kind of stay on the thread of lifelong friends and just friends in general. And I did want to kind of talk about two things. One is, oh my gosh, I had my college 30th reunion from Miami of Ohio last weekend, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it. But man, a giant contingency of folks were. And so I was blessed to receive a ample amount of harassment / photos / videos / ridiculously late phone calls and FaceTime attempts up until like 5 a.m. East Coast time, which is 2 a.m. my time. Now, I am pretty well versed on technology, and I definitely take advantage of the do not disturb on the iPhone, where the only thing that's slipping through during those late night hours would be if my mom called, and my brother maybe. But anyway, holy mackerel, it was hilarious. I woke up to like attempts at FaceTime. I'm not going to mention any names, but like up until like 5:30 in the morning. I'm like, what the heck, man? What are you guys doing? That is crazy, but super fun. And it really, honestly, I was very sad I wasn't able to make it, and it took a lot of grief. I took a lot of grief for that, and I do apologize for not being able to make it. But it made me really contemplate over the weekend just the difference in friends these days. And I don't know if you guys feel this way or not, but I really do feel that, life has changed. It has. It just has. If you're like, what are you talking about? Life hasn't changed. And it's the past 4 years, if not the past 8 years. I mean, again, I do take it back to, there was an initial change when Trump took office in 2016 to 2020. I do think that brought in a more division inside America, for sure. And I think it brought in more conflict and all that. But I don't think the real change happened until 2020. And I have talked about this before, but honestly, I will probably talk about it more because I don't see it getting better. I actually see it getting worse, and I see it getting more divided. And I'm going to talk about a few things in those regards here shortly. But, I see it getting worse. I see it getting more divided. And so fundamentally, things have changed. You just have to accept that. They have. They absolutely have. Relationships have changed. Dynamics have changed. And a lot of that is because of, the onslaught of social media and then the ability to connect online versus offline. Seriously, if you think about it, and actually, here's a great topic. So a good group of, a lot of my friends from college went back for the 30th. And so I would get sent all these pictures, and we have a super fun alumni WhatsApp group that I think the lovely Lisa Schrader created, or maybe Dave Schwab. I'll give those two a shout out, see if they text me anything. That way I know they listen or they don't. Chances are they don't, but that's okay. So that, oh, and you know what? Maybe somebody else created that. Anyway, regardless, so all these pictures came through, right? Like just really nice and really great. And so, what was cool for me, to be totally honest, is, when I would zoom in and pan across and kind of look and see everybody, I can't say everybody, but a good chunk of the people, I really felt like I knew what was going on in their lives. I really did. And that's because of social media. I would look at a certain person. I'm like, oh, I know what's going on in her life. Her daughter just graduated from Miami, this, that, whatever. So like that's really cool, And so as as I was getting the onslaught of all this over the weekend, it really did cause me in between recording of podcast interviews, which holy mackerel, I recorded 6 interviews over the weekend. That caused me to, be reflective on that and think like, okay, cool. I know what's going on with that person. I know what's going on with that person and all that. So that all, again, I mean, this social media thing is like a double-edged sword. I think that's amazing. If you think about it, prior to social media and prior to all this, I wouldn't have known. And let's say I did not, obviously I did not attend my 30th. So I would not have known anything with any of these people, what's been going on in their lives, unless we kept in touch via the phone. So it is very cool that, again, even though I wasn't able to make it, I felt a connection to everybody. And I felt like I knew what was going on with, most of the people that are active on social media and that I'm part of. So I think that is very cool. The other thing it caused me to think about is, we've all changed. I mean, we really have. I know I've changed. I know that. And again, I don't even want to say I've changed because deep down, I don't think I've changed 1 ounce since growing up in Warrensville Heights on Walford, moving to Chesterland and living on Pear Tree, or going to Miami, or being 20 years old. I don't think fundamentally my core has changed, but I will say, and again, it really for me has been the last 4 years, and this is really last 4 years or 8 years, and again, this is a lot about what I talk about in the book, but I want to say evolved. I mean, I'll give myself credit and say evolved. Some people are like, you've maybe devolved. But no, seriously, like I feel like I have evolved as a person, and a lot of it ironically does go back to these pillars that I talk about in the book and that really are, becoming more and more a part of my, I guess, regimen, acumen, whatever other big word that ends with MEN. But, self-awareness, I really do feel like the past 4 years have brought on an additional layer of self-awareness for me. Resilience for sure, because man, I mean, we've all gone through tough times. I mean, I've gone through tough times the past 4 years with my liquid vitamin business, and I'm still going through challenging times with that. My supply chain is still not correct. Prices are out of the roof. I mean, they are just insane how much cost of goods has increased across the board. Some of it legitimately, some of it, other businesses just taking advantage. Shipping costs are outrageous. Like for me, I make a heavy product. It's a liquid vitamin. So for me to literally, somebody buys a 3-pack of my liquid vitamin, so a 3-month supply, let's say they buy that for $75 on the website, and let's say they didn't use a coupon or some type of incentive or rebate or something like that, that 9-pound box, which I'm giving them free shipping on, that is now costing me, if I'm shipping to the East Coast, that's costing me almost $8, $9. So think about that. I'm eating that. I'm eating $9 because I'm giving the free shipping. Small businesses, small to mid-sized businesses, when it comes to shipping, we don't have the leverage and scale that Amazon does to where, you can order it at 6 p.m. and it shows up at your door at 8 in the morning, and maybe it costs them $1 to ship it. I don't know. I don't know what their rates are, but I'm sure their rates are obviously incredibly favorable due to the volume. But the costs have gone up, dramatically on everything on the business side. And then obviously, in our own consumer worlds, they've increased dramatically. Obviously one of the most crucial and the biggest being the home mortgage interest rate and all that. So, resilience, you've had to become more resilient. And then it gets into, the other two pillars, authenticity. I mean, that one to me, gosh, I just love that one. Like, I really love authentic people. I genuinely do. And I strive for that myself. And then ending with empathy, that's the one that I always come back to, because I feel like if you put yourself in other people's shoes in every situation, it'll really help you see things from their side. And quite frankly, just be a human being when it comes to everything. And again, I'm not going to mention anything specific, but if you've listened to this podcast, you probably know the biggest thing that I reference in terms of empathy. And, gosh, just be empathetic toward people. Anyway, to get back on track, what I was saying was that, what is super cool to me is that I feel like when you have these old friends, like folks you've known from high school, college, maybe even earlier, even though we've all changed a little bit, some people, maybe their political opinions are in one direction. Some people, maybe their political opinions are in another direction. I think it's really cool when the core of the person has remained, ideally. And then I think it's even cooler when the friends can recognize that. You know what I mean? So regardless of whether, let's say, someone and I agree on an ongoing current situation, someone and I agree on a stance on a previous situation, whether that's COVID or whatever, it doesn't matter, because if we've got that equity built up with each other and that genuine, to an extent, love, but if I don't want to sound cheesy about it, like for one another, then the old friendships, they're like the oak trees, they really do sustain through all this. Whereas, I will say folks that, let's say maybe I became friends with a few years before COVID or something like that, I don't, and let's say now we totally disagree on all of this stuff, or we have different opinions, those friendships have not made it through. They just haven't. For me at least. Now, again, nothing's become confrontational or anything like that, but they just kind of fade away. They really do. They fade away. I'm not into like the unfriending on social media or things like that. I just find that so silly. Even if I have a disagreement with somebody, I'm not going to like unfriend them. I have had people do that to me. I'll tell you that for sure. Because I'm savvy and I go back and I'm like, oh, let's see if that person did that. And a lot of them have. Not a lot of them, but like some of them have. Actually, probably less than a handful. So not many, but some of them have. But like, to me, that's silly because, again, especially, well, I should say the ones that have, they're not the old school friends. They're not the friends that I've got built up equity with, They're the friends that might be, I don't know, 5 years, even maybe a little bit longer. But again, maybe that equity isn't there as much. So that friendship in their eyes, wasn't able to sustain a difference in opinion. But anyway, I'm glad all of my college friends had an amazing time at the reunion. And again, like I said, I think it's a testament to the quality of friendships from back in the day. I really do. I really think it's a testament to the quality of those friendships. And so I'm going to leave this section with saying, cherish those friends, man. Really cherish those friends and cultivate those relationships, and don't ignore those relationships, because those are better relationships. They are. I'm not saying don't make new friends, but I'm saying absolutely appreciate and value your friendships from the past. Okay, shifting gears. Wow, this episode is going to be another one that is totally different than when I started. And I think it's going to be all kind of a real talk episode, so let's do it. So I did want to talk about something else, and again, it's on that friendship thread. But last week I had another good friend from ironically, Miami of Ohio, a friend from college in town, fraternity brother. And he was in town and we got together for dinner. And I love this guy to death. I'm not going to mention his name, but I love him to death. And we have a great relationship. And we've always had a great relationship, since freshman year, basically. And so, we started talking about things and I was telling him about the podcast and, the book and things like that. And he is not on social media at all. He says he has an account, but he's not active. So honestly, with him, actually, this is funny. This is a little bit the opposite of what I was just talking about. So with him nor his wife are that active in social media. So I didn't really know what's going on in his life, unlike kind of what I was talking about before. And so, we were really catching up on a lot of things. Now, remember, we have that tremendous equity built with each other. But, I started telling him about the podcast. He had no idea about it. I started telling him about the book. Obviously, he had no idea about that. So anyway, then we started talking about politics and I was like, oh, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? What do you think about this? And he's like, oh man, I've stopped watching the news and I don't watch anything. And I was like, okay, that's cool. Honestly, that actually is potentially healthy for the right person. If that stuff really bothers you, there's no reason, especially if it's not part of your work or if it's not part of, your life to where you need to, really, I guess, make a change on that. Or I'm sorry, not make a change, but really be up to speed and aware on that stuff. So I said, well, where do you, and then we started talking specific issues. And I was like, well, if you don't listen to anything, I guess, how do you form your opinions on these specific issues? And he kind of really didn't have an answer. And I think a lot of times when people aren't versed on the topic, the fallback is, oh, they all suck and they're all crooked and they're all this and they're all that. That's really the fallback. It's kind of like when I would say, I hate politics, said everyone, including myself. And by the way, that's in the book too. And that's true. That's the fallback when you don't really have, I guess, a formulated opinion based off of whatever data you take in. So then I was like, you don't listen to anybody? Like, do you listen to, I don't know, CNBC, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, Fox? Do you read the news on the internet? Do you use Apple News? Do you use this? Do you use that? He really didn't do much of anything. And then I started talking to him about, well, he's like, well, what do you do? I said, well, I mean, obviously my situation's a little bit different because, first of all, I'm really interested in this stuff. And then secondly, for the podcast, I really try to scour the news to talk about, the things that I want to talk about. And so, I listen to all the usual suspects. I scan all the headlines. I get a lot of, daily emails in the morning, which, I spend maybe the first 30 minutes of every morning skimming through the emails that come in from, CNN, Fox, News Nation, The Intercept, The Guardian. I take in a very diverse data set of opinions. And then I said, and I do listen to other podcasters and I consume other people's media the way that I'm hoping people will continue to consume my media and content. And he's like, well, who's your favorite? And I said, well, I don't really have a favorite, but I will say, when I think about who really goes after the, topics that I think are controversial, let's see if you guys can guess. I'm going to give you 2 seconds to think whose name I'm going to say. 1, 2. Okay, if you said Tucker Carlson, then you really do know me pretty well, and you've been listening to this show. And again, the reason I say Tucker Carlson is because he really does confront what I think are controversial topics regularly and consistently. And again, I don't agree with everything he talks about. Best example being UFOs. I think UFOs are a complete sham. I don't think they're real. And Tucker Carlson's dead set on them being real. And so it's not about agreeing with everything he says, but he brings on a really diverse group of guests. And this week I'm going to play some different things. I was going to do it today, but man, I'm already coming up on 20 minutes, so I'm not going to do it. But so I said Tucker Carlson. As soon as I said Tucker Carlson, he's like, oh, that guy's the worst. I'm going to swear for a second. So, oh, that guy's the worst fucking human being ever. I was like, really? I go, well, why do you think that? First of all, I totally respect that. I'm not Tucker Carlson's brother, so I'm not offended when you say that. Or if you listened to an episode a while back where I gave you this phrase in Farsi that translated to, what does it belong to your aunt? Tucker Carlson does not belong to my aunt. Therefore, I am not offended by him not liking Tucker Carlson. Honestly, I could care less. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, why? Why do you think he's such an awful human being? And the answer was, oh, he's just terrible. He's just terrible. And then I was like, no, I get that. I heard you. But like, what do you think is terrible? Like, what don't you like about him? Do you not like his positions? Do you not like his delivery? You know, we talked about delivery last week with Bill Maher. I said, that's a guy that just really, gets under my skin sometimes with his delivery. But even that, if you didn't catch it when I said it on Friday, maybe he gets under my skin because I disagree with him. And so I'm actually working on being better at that. Like I'm working on not allowing differing viewpoints to get under my skin. Seriously, that's true, because there are guys, Bill Maher being one of them. Sometimes Pierce Morgan is like that, where, they get under my skin when I disagree with them. And again, maybe that's a me problem. I need to be more open to that. But getting back to him and Tucker, he really wasn't able to even give me any reason whatsoever why he hated him so much, or why he thought he was the worst human being ever, quote unquote. And then I said, okay, that's cool. And then he's like, well, what do you like about him? And I said, well, what I like about him is, I started listening to him during COVID, because again, the whole COVID thing for me, for lack of a more complicated way of saying it, it just intrigued me. I had questions along the way, and not everything that I heard made sense. And he was literally probably one of the only people, definitely the only person with that big of a platform that was asking questions on a daily basis. I go, so because of that, and then because he got fired from Fox for doing all of that, I've followed him to his network, and, I pay attention to what he says, because he brings interesting guests on and he asks interesting questions and he lets them talk. And he did that last week with Thomas Massey. I'm going to play some things later this week from that interview, because it was a great episode. It was a really great episode. And it touched on, it's funny, it touched on so many of the things that we've talked about, namely the military industrial complex and all that. And when you hear that from a congressman who went to MIT, is incredibly interesting guy. I'm talking about Thomas Massey now. It kind of makes you think like, okay, that's interesting. Now I've heard military industrial complex from Thomas Massey, RFK Jr., Mehdi Hassan. I've heard it from, Tucker Carlson. I've heard it from Russell Brand. I've heard it from Patrick Bet-David. I've heard it from this. I've heard it from that. Man, I've probably heard it from 20 influential people out there. So there's probably some merit to it. It probably does exist. So I thought that was kind of reassuring from the Thomas Massey episode. But anyway, just to finish on that, I just said, I listen to him. I listen to his takes. I don't agree with everything, but I do find that they are original, and I find that they talk about things that are of interest to me, and therefore it gives me a base of material in order to then have an opinion on things. So in summary, from my conversation with him, I just was a little bit like, I was like, well, I don't even know how you form a opinion on something if you're not taking in 20 other opinions and then crafting what you think is correct. Seriously. And so like part of what part of what I am going to continue to strive to do for you guys is give you this diversity of thought process from other people, and then give you my thought process. So I can be, I really would like to be one of the data points in your thought process. So when you think about your opinion about a specific topic, ideally, if you've heard me talk about it here on Deep Shallow Dive, I hope I can be like one of your analyzing data points where you're like, okay, you know what? We're talking about XYZ. Oh, I remember Ray talked about that. I did like what he said there. I don't know if I agree with the full extent of this. I don't know if I totally agree with there being this organized military industrial complex, but maybe it does exist to an extent. Okay, I'll factor that into my decision making. That's it, man. That's all I want. That's all I want. I want you to factor it into your decision making and use me as a data point. So anyway, to conclude on all that, like I said, it was a great conversation. We had a great time. Love this guy to death. But it definitely, did make me think that, at the end of the day, you do need to take in, I talk about narratives a lot, and I talk about like things that I think are being guided in a certain direction, but you've got to take that all in to then even be able to decide if they are being guided in a certain direction, or better yet, if you are being guided in a certain direction. So anyway, I would encourage you guys to just, pay attention. Just pay attention, really pay attention. And, I have had a couple friends tell me, they're like, we do pay attention. We listen to your podcast. That gives us the attention we need. And quite frankly, I only have 30 minutes a day for this, so I'm choosing you. That makes me feel incredibly nice, and I appreciate it. And I'm going to continue to just try and give you that real talk and try and give you that real perspective. So anyway, all right, that is it for today, everybody. I will actually delve into a bunch of good stuff this week. I will tell you this, I'm going to try and put an episode out on Wednesday for sure, ideally Thursday, and then Friday will be the release of the episode with Jonathan Bogner, which is going to talk about his heart transplant. This is going to be the second in the guest interview series. And again, like I said, I honestly think I'm going to be able to get to a point where I'm releasing guest interviews, if not every other Friday, well, definitely every other Friday, but I might even be able to release interviews every Friday. So that way that can be the episode for Friday will be a guest interview. Those normally last, let's say, an hour. That gives you a chance to break it up over a couple sittings over the weekend if you want to do it that way. But anyway, that's about it. Thanks again. Looking forward to a good week, and talk to you soon.
The ending was terrific.
This episode was brought to you by the new book, Deep Shallow Dive Into You, available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hardcover and paperback. Don't forget to sign up for our new mailing list on our website at deepshallowdive.com.